going on, my friends? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about something pretty interesting. I've been calling it the freeze frame deconstruct effect. I'm not sure what to call it, but essentially what it is it's a combination of a freeze frame and a match cut. If you don't know what those two things are, I recommend you go in the description, you open up a new tab learning about the freeze frame and learning about the match cut effects. You can do them in any video editing software. It doesn't have to be Adobe Premiere, and they're very simple things to learn. Once you have a general understanding of those two things, the freeze frame and the match cut, then you'll be ready for this tutorial. And there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with this tutorial. We're going to talk about what you can do with still images, so something like commercial shoots, product shoots, and we're also going to be talking about how you can use this maybe with live footage, music videos, creative videos. So it still has that popping freeze frame style, but it's matching the continuity of the last shot. And if we actually go and break down what we did here, you'll see if I go frame by frame, it's pretty simple. We're just doing simple things like cropping, some basic effects like an invert, then masking out specific parts of the next shoe, then overlaying it on top. So we're gonna show you how to do all of this. We're gonna use simple PNG imaging to show the basics of it. And then we're gonna talk a little bit about the more advanced, how you can do this with video footage, the best ways to go about it for the best results, because there are a lot of factors that go into this and different applications you can have for this. You can do this with people's faces. You can do this with different shirts, different shoes. A lot of it comes down to pre-planning, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. What you're going to need are some still images. I recommend you have PNG files with transparent backgrounds, such as this right here. To actually create those images, you're going to need to take the pictures themselves and then mask them out in some sort of photo editing software, or you can go on Google Images. As long as you're using royalty-free stuff, you can practice this effect for free without even owning a camera. You don't have to do this on only shoes. You can do this with different cars. You can do this with different t-shirts, clothing. There's so many different things that you can do this effect on. You just need to make sure that the continuity is the same. So you're going to want to find similar looking pictures. For example, this car next to this car next to this car. So let's do it on cars instead of shoes. We're going to right click. We're going to click Save Image As, and you'll see I'll set this up with faces in a little bit as well. Let's go ahead and make a new folder here. Let's go ahead and right click and make a new folder here so that all our images are in one organized space. And we're going to just name this Car Side Shots. Click inside that folder and we're going to name this 1. And then let's just find a bunch of different car shots that we can use here. Let's see if we can even go to Tools, Color, Transparent. So if you do that in your Google search, you won't even have to cut out the background in Photoshop. It'll save you a lot of time if you would like to just practice it. So let's just save a bunch of these for now. And the more images that you throw into this effect, the more flashy the animation is going to be. A reason why this shoe animation here turned out the way it did is because we're using a huge range of different shoes, which adds a lot of flow, a lot of motion to it. So you have your images in your folder now. So these are either going to be PNG files or JPEG files if you shot them yourself or you're working with only JPEGs. Say you are working with a JPEG and you want to have the transparency. Again, it's optional, but it'll help in terms of customizing the background. So this first image here, this is a JPEG. This isn't a PNG. It doesn't have a transparent background. So if I drag this here, you'll see this overlays over top of the shoe. But if I drag in one of the PNGs, this is now over top of the shoe with no background. To get rid of the background on your JPEG files, we're going to have to open up Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, you can use something like GIMP or GIMP, I think is a free photo editing software. There's a lot out there. You just have to do a quick Google search and find something that has a masking tool. Tidy up your image until you have something clean like this. We're going to go to File, Save As. We're going to save this as a PNG file. So let's find our car side shots, save as type. We're going to make this a PNG, and then we can name this 1. So that is how you can create the PNG out of any of your JPEGs. So if you're doing it yourself, if you're shooting it on set for your client, throw them into Photoshop, cut out the part that you want, and make sure it has a transparent background. Now we need to import them like I did here, so that when we press play, it's going to create this animation of them kind of just changing back and forth in the same relative area. And then that's when we're going to start adding the freeze frame aspect of it, and we're going to start adding some of these simple little customizations and the background elements to fully get this animation. So to do that, let's go ahead and just make a new sequence here so we have a fresh canvas. So File, New Sequence. I'm going to use this 1080p by 24 frames per second preset. We're going to click and drag to select all of them. only the PNG, so not our JPEGs, and click and drag them into your Adobe Premiere project bin in the bottom left here. Now, before we drag these into the timeline, you're going to want to keep these all selected. If they're not selected anymore, you can just click, hold down Shift on your keyboard, and just make sure these are all selected. Right click on them. We're going to go to speed duration, and we're going to reduce the duration here so that it's only a few frames. If we were just to drag these in here, you'll see the duration is 4 seconds for each. So it would be 4 seconds and then switch to the next. Let's Control Z that. If we do the duration beforehand, so right click, speed duration, we're going to make this, instead of 4 seconds, we'll make that 0. We want to only make this around 4 to 5 frames. And this is going to change your speed. If you make it lower than 4 frames, it's going to be super quick animation and cycling through the different ones. If you make it above 4 frames, it's going to be a little bit faster with how fast it switches. Since we only have around 7 images, let's even go above 4 frames. Let's maybe make this 6 frames. So we'll click OK, and now we can click and drag, and we have the nice stack already in here. So let's click play. Let's click our space bar on our keyboard, or click this, and we'll see what our animation looks like. So we have one main issue here. This is an okay animation speed, but the size of the cars are varying a lot. So to fix that issue, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to line these all up. So you can just take one as a reference. Let's just click and drag it in a video layer above. And we're just going to size these so that they are exactly the same. So let's first find our ideal size. So select your layer, go up to your effect controls, and then just work with your scale, your positioning. I think this is a good relative size for how all of the cars should be. Let's show our bottom layer here, and we're going to resize every car to be around this size. So select the bottom layer. Let's go ahead and size this down. If you want, you can put it on top. Size this down, change your positioning. Sometimes you'll have the same positioning, but it's flipped. An easy little fix to that, let's just go to our effects library here, and you'll see I've already searched for it. Just search for the flip effect, and we're just going to put a little horizontal flip on there. Another thing that can help with the lining up is your opacity option that you have right here. Just open that up, lower this from 100%. You can kind of make it see through a bit, and that way you can completely line this up as perfectly as you can. And this little tip that I just mentioned here, this is going to come very much in handy when we do this with actual footage, video footage, and not just images. So here's what our animation is looking like now. They're relatively around the same size, and now we can start adding our freeze frame, masking, effects, and everything else that we would like. So starting off, you want to raise the second image up a little bit, and you want to take the first frame out of that. So we're going to click on our keyboard the right arrow key once to move over 1 frame. We're going to click Control K to make a cut. You can also use your little razor tool here. And now we're going to take this 1 frame of our second layer, and we're going to alt drag it up. We're going to make a duplication of it. If you want, since I drag this up, I can even click Control C, Control V, and there it is. But if you want to make it easier, just click alt drag up. So now we have an exact duplication of only the first frame. What you want to do here is just click and drag this a few frames over. So now what we can do is we can take this 1 frame and we can put it in a video layer above frame 1. So here's frame 1. We're taking this duplication of our first frame and just putting that over top of the car. So you'll see if we press play, it kind of like pops in, but you can still see the second car behind it. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to use masking to only take one piece of this SUV and have that overlaid. So if we select the layer, we go to our opacity here, we can click our pen tool, and let's just start with the wheel. Again, you want to look for simple shapes that match up. That's what the key to this effect really is. It's creating these freeze frames, but in a way that has continuity like a match cut. Here's what that looks like. We just connected our mask. You'll see this is a little bit offset from the wheel of my second car. An easy way to fix that is just click it, click your motion. You can just click motion here and then drag it over, or you can change your exact values. So we'll drag it over the wheel. Now the only issue is if we're dragging it over the wheel like that, it's going to be a little bit offset from the second layer. So what we need to do is we need to take the motion change we did on this freeze frame, and it's pretty easy. You can just right click, copy, select the second one, and then paste only your motion. So only check the motion here and click OK. If you check opacity, it's going to copy and paste the mask. So only check that motion box. Again, Don't check opacity, only check motion. So now this completely lines up for our car. And that's essentially the bread and butter of the effect. It's matching it up and then having the next image pop in. If you want to change the length of the freeze frame pop in, you can just drag this layer out. Now it'll be longer. And again, if you want it to be super quick, it'll pop in just like that by reducing the size of the clip. And you can get creative with this. You can get fancy with this. Say you want to have these wheels kind of like rotating, like they're moving. Easy way to do that. Select it. You're going to want to find your anchor point here. So just click anchor point in your effect controls. You'll see this little dot. Just move that to the center of the wheel. And now we can take our rotation here, keyframe it at our beginning position, drag, and then let's just make this do 1x0. So that'll mean it'll do one rotation and then just drag this keyframe so it goes to the end. So bam, just like that. And again, you need to do your anchor point first. If you don't have that anchor point in the right direction, this is gonna roll all over the place. So make sure your anchor point is in the middle of the wheel there. And essentially all you need to do is just repeat those steps. So just rewind the video, rewatch those steps on how to create it. It's pretty simple. You'll see a big reason of why this looks the way it does is because the whole time I was doing this, I was thinking on how I could play the next shoe in with the last. So you'll see for the Converses that have a lot of the arrows, I'm using the freeze frames and I'm kind of popping to make these moving forward animations. For things that have the star, I'm highlighting the star. For things that have circles here, I'm making them rotate like I did with the wheel. For a lot of the lines in the straps, you'll see I kind of did one mask, second mask, third mask. So there's a lot you can do. You can mask different parts of the shoe. With the shoe, it gives you a lot of room for this. So that's why it works very well. With something like a car or something like a t-shirt or a person's face, you got to get a little bit more creative and think a little bit more into it. And it may take a little bit more experimentation. Let's go back to square one where we just had our duplication over top here. You can go to effects, add a little crop effect, and we can just animate a little crop effect. So let's go to our effect controls and just kind of change the left value. So you'll see what that looks like. And now we can try and match those two up. So we'll click motion. We'll try and match this as best as possible. So 50%, if you want, you can just have it kind of pop in like that. Those are just some simple little effects that you guys can do. Get creative with it. Repeat these steps for all the other that's in the sequence here. Again, it doesn't have to be too crazy. It's happening pretty fast. So anything that kind of matches with the continuity and using that freeze frame effect and all the other basics. If you need to learn some more effects, check out my channel. If you want some inspiration for things you can do, you can play this frame by frame through YouTube, clicking the little left and right comma and period keys on your keyboard. Or of course in Adobe Premiere, you can use your actual left and right keys. 90% of this is just masking, simple things, cropping, flashing, rotating. Not a lot of crazy advanced things going in there. It's more of just the knowledge on how to apply it. And now let's apply it to video footage. So again, we're gonna make a new sequence here. We're gonna go to File, New Sequence. And I'm going to drag in the footage that I was using before. Keep in mind that this is completely unplanned, unprepared for. I just tried to find shots that looked similar. So a little bit of my thought processing while I was doing this is I had 3 old shots here where I had 3 different girls looking in one direction. So getting kind of like a side profile of their face. This is the first one, second one, and the third one. So they're doing relatively the same thing. They're all looking to one direction. And in fact, in a lot of these shots, they were looking to a different direction. I used that flip effect here. Originally, she was looking this way. I used the flip effect. So here is my step one. I found shot of girl looking to the side, another shot of a different girl looking to the side, another shot of another girl looking to the side. It doesn't have to be girls looking to the side. I'm just using old footage. I didn't have a group of people that I could walk up to and just film the side of their face. Maybe you guys are shooting some sort of project. Maybe you guys are shooting a music video. The thing I want to get across before we start these similar steps is the pre-planning is what will make this a lot more smooth, easy, and better looking. What I mean by pre-planning is if there's a lot of motion in your shots, handheld, this is not going to look really good unless you really finesse it in the edit and try and combine it as best as possible. To make this as easy as possible, shoot this on a tripod or use clips that have minimal handheld movement or movement that you could track. And again, we'll leave the tracking to a part 2. Second is you're going to want to make sure that these are relatively the same size, distance away from each other. If not, we can scale them up, and we're going to show you how to do the lining up part now. Take this shot, and we're just going to place it above the last frame of this clip. This is where our transition is going to be. Select it. Again, this one, she's looking a different direction, so we're going to have to flip it. Let's go to effects. Let's go to flip. Place the horizontal flip on her. And now we can select it, go up to our effect controls, and we can just lower the opacity a bit. So you'll see it's not lining up perfectly, so we can change the position. And there you go. It's lining up a little bit better. You can change your scaling if you want. And you'll see if we put our opacity back, this isn't lining up because, again, these weren't pre-planned. This is where the issues come in. So to fix that, what you would have to do is you'd have to scale both of these up for it to make sense. So you'd have to nest this clip here. So select them both, right click and nest. And then you'd have to scale this up to where there's no edges showing, just like that. So now we have this zoomed in because we have to. And then we have the next one, and you'll see this is essentially our match cut. Again, if you watch that match cut video, this is the same composition, it's in the same area, and there's no fanciness, it's just a nice smooth transition from one spot to the other. Now let's bring in the freeze frame aspect to this match cut. Double click into our nested sequence here, and you'll see exactly what we were doing before, just our two clips. And let's go ahead and get crazy with these two clips. So we're going to create a freeze frame. I'm going to click once on my right arrow key, and then Control K to cut it out. I'm going to hold down Alt, click and drag up. So same steps we've been doing this whole tutorial. Now the only difference is we can't just drag this out because look, this will keep moving. We have to right click on it and we have to add a frame hold. Now that we have the frame hold, we can drag it out. For some reason, if it doesn't work, just keep trying to do it. Sometimes these adding frame holds is kind of annoying. There we go. So it finally worked. We have our frame hold. We have our freeze frame here. So now we can go ahead and place this over top of our last clip here, just like that. And now we're just going to use masking to cut out the parts that we'd like to cut. A lot of you may recognize this from that ASAP Ferg floor seeds tutorial I made a while back. We talked about the facial match cutting, different facial features or body parts using just Photoshop. This is just going a lot more in depth into that same kind of concept, but that's still using the match cut and the freeze frame. So let's go ahead and start masking. We're going to select the clip. Up in our effect controls here, we're going to go to our opacity and let's grab our pencil here. And in my opinion, this is the most fun part to do. You can just click, select, and we can just kind of cut out any piece that we want. So let's just go with this eye here. And you'll see that it automatically lines up over top of our next clip. We can select that. If you want to keep it rough, you can kind of have the mask like that. If you want to have it more blended, try and matching the faces as much as possible. You can go to your mask feather option here and just raise that, and that'll smooth out the edge. So now it looks like it's kind of one shot, but with a different eye. You can also click the mask tool here and adjust it if you need to. And another little pro tip, if you're in your color workspace or however you color grade, color correct in your video editing software of choice, you can select the clip and let's add a little bit of tint to match this shot that we have. You'll see there's a lot of pink, red lighting. So we can add this tint here. We can maybe add some contrast and just mess around with this and try and match the color correction as best as possible. You can do some really cool stuff with this. You can get really creative. That's why I really like this effect, and that's why I think that you guys can use this in a bunch of different ways. So we're gonna wanna cut this off right when our second shot starts. So it should look like that. See, there's the match cut if you just pay attention to the eye. If you pay attention to the right eye, there's our match cut. So bam, just like that. Let's add a little bit more length onto here. Now, again, touching on that motion tracking, if you want me to make a part 2, really kind of creating some crazy looks with this and trying to match it. The reason why it looks a little off is because this clip is moving. You'll see this is changing a little bit because it's handheld. This was shot on a tripod, and if there was minimal movement, almost like a picture, there wouldn't be any change, but you'll see if we go frame by frame, the eye just isn't perfectly centered. It kind of just pops over. What you can do to try and match that a little bit better, select your clip, go up to your motion here and keyframe it at our starting position. Let's move to our end position, and then we can just try and match that a little bit better. If that isn't working for some reason with the mask, it doesn't. Sorry, I should have mentioned this first. Right click, nest that first. So nest the freeze frame first. Then you can keyframe it at your starting position. And then we can move over a bit, try and create a little bit of matched movement. Do the nose here just to rehash what we've been talking about. Find this side profile part. And again, we're going to have to use this flip effect here. Let's drag this over top of the clip, and we're going to have to try and actually line these up. So right here, we're going to lower the opacity again in our effect controls. So lower your opacity, put your scale up, and let's even click motion here and just try and line these up. So try and line up the noses because that's what we're trying to match cut, match freeze frame, deform, transform, cut, whatever the word for it is. Put the opacity up. And then again, all you need to do is mask. So we click our pen tool, and then we just select the area that we're trying to pop in like that. Maybe kind of end it here. It's gonna look really weird like this. So to blend this a bit, we'll just add some more feathering, and you'll see that actually masks in a lot better than the first time I did it. So some feathering, and it's a little bit blue from the old shot here, so we can add a little bit of warm tint like this. And after a few seconds of that, we'll cut this, and you're just going to want to right click, and then you're just going to want to delete the mask off the second part, because this is where it switches to normal footage. So something like that. I think that actually turned out a lot better than the first time I did it. Again, you'll see this is moving, so we can position scale. And with those keyframes, I think that is as close to a motion track as we're gonna get. Again, if you want me to build on this, let me know in the comments down below. There's still other videos out there that I promised a part 2 for, and they're going to be coming. I have it on my notepad. They just take a little bit more time to set up. So we have a lot more continuations of things I made. But aside from that, we have a lot more new things that I haven't talked about. We talked about freeze frames, we talked about match cuts. I want to bring some new things to this channel, more 3D, some more animation work, and try and build just a giant library of interesting things on this channel that can help you guys for your projects. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting, and I'll see you guys in the next one.